Sometimes people walk out of good movies for their own issues, like when your mum won't stop calling me to give her that sweet, sweet nectar she wants. There's my one per list. But I think that we've all walked out on a bad movie at least once in our lives, right? It's a rite of passage. It's the moment that you say, no thanks, I paid money to watch this, and if it's got the quality of an Adam Wilborn joke, then I'm entitled to kick up a stink and demand a refund. Now, I could have just picked loads of really low-bar flicks for this list, but what I did was go and look for articles and news points that actually showed that people had left in droves because of these films. They were that f***ing bad. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, Whatculture.com, and these are 9 movies so awful that you walked out of the cinema. Number 9, Epic Movie. Epic Movie is about the worst parody movie going. However, by having such high-profile names and using the likes of Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Narnia as its riffing material, it still managed to make 4 times its total budget. And you know what? From an outsider's perspective, this made the film look really good. The leap in the box office chart suggesting this mash of hot properties would produce a well-baked product. It didn't, though, and it was akin to lukewarm shit. Number 8, The Hottie and the Naughty. We're lucky these days that Paris Hilton is considered no more than a relic of the time when TV reality shows were a little too popular, but for a while, some brains in Hollywood thought that they could capitalize on her brand. Is she a brand? And they thought they'd do that by making her a movie star. As was immediately evident for anyone who came to see this mean-spirited comedy, she was woefully underqualified. And on top of that, she was saddled with a film whose inner message was that if you give ugly pigs a decent go, you might discover that they aren't completely despicable humans. Delivering on neither comedy, romance, or heart, this floppy turd still somehow manages to be the highlight of her acting career. Number 7, Avatar: The Last Airbender. No respect for the source material, terrible effects, offensive casting choices, penis-haired actresses. F*** this movie. Number 6, Jack and Jill. God f***ing damn, this movie is trash, and the worst part of it is that Adam Sandler knew it. He did it for a fat paycheck provided by all the in-movie ads he provided, and he laughed all his way to the f***ing bank. This is an aggressively poor film, with Sandler both playing himself and his sister. The annoying thing is that the jokes here could have worked with a little more care, but they are shat out with such low impact and low volume, this becomes more of a pain than having a tent peg hammered into your scrotum. Number 5, Movie 43. Even years later, Movie 43 feels like a terrible joke told at the expense of everyone involved, as if the creators had a vendetta against everyone in the industry and audience and were going to make us all pay. The problem was, it looked like it should have been really good fun. It was being directed by the guy behind There's Something About Mary, and it had a stunning cast who all seemed willing to poke fun at themselves. The reality is that this is an offensive circus sideshow of deeply mirthless garbage, whose only reward for those who didn't walk out was a symbolic endurance medal. Number 4, Catwoman. Back when Tim Burton was still making Batman movies, he had a plan to release a spin-off starring Michelle Pfeiffer, but after some delays and studio reluctance, the film slowly crumbled away in developmental hell. But then Warner Brothers finally came through, casting Oscar winner Halle Berry as the new Catwoman. This would definitely not be a disaster at all. Sadly, the idea of a good Catwoman movie was sold entirely on what Pfeiffer and Burton had created in Batman Returns, and what Berry's version delivered was unrecognizable to fans. Not only was it an entirely different character, but she was in a film whose script felt like an accident, and a particularly boring accident at that. Number 3, Only God Forgives. With Drive becoming a white-hot property, anyone attached to it would also get some of that hot heat. The director had made one of the coolest films of the decade and cemented Ryan Gosling as a star. So of course we'd all practically leap into the cinema for the director's follow-up, which teamed the pair up again and seemed to be marketed as a similar vehicle of cool. The issue here, of course, is that Only God Forgives is nothing like Drive. It has Ryan Gosling in it, but it might as well be an exercise in directorial masturbation while the camera lovingly stares at a mostly mute Gosling. It's a provocative film, not only in its imagery, but also in its agenda to mess with every air-quote mainstream film fan who loved Drive, and it's hard not to feel like the director was aiming to make people leave in disgust or boredom, and you know what? It worked. Number 2, 50 Shades of Grey. The cold truth of it is that 50 Shades of Grey sold so much that it was always destined to be made into movies. They were never going to be good, but money talks. And for the fans who genuinely liked E.L. James's brand of fetishized abuse, that meant a promise of a real sexiness and an actual Mr. Grey to fantasize about anew. Sadly, the film, though lucrative, fundamentally misread what it was supposed to be. In trying to elevate the material, and failing, it cut down on the raunch, which was pretty much the only reason anyone wanted to go see it. So we ended up with a subpar softcore porn about entirely unlikable characters hurting each other. That's just not a good time at all. And number 1, The Love Guru. For a while, Mike Myers had one of the best comedy gigs in Hollywood. He'd created 3 great characters in Wayne Campbell, Shrek, and Austin Powers, and allowed him to pick up huge paychecks and occasionally make other interesting movies like 54 when he had the time. Sadly, in amongst the Shrek sequels, he made The Love Guru, which might well be one of the worst movies ever made. Without proper restraint, Myers goes full goofball in a film that starts with a masturbation joke and goes downhill from there. It is vulgar, crass, and stupid without any laughs to make up for it, and it shouldn't come to any surprise to anyone who's walked out that it basically killed his career. Fantastic.